Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where boundaries, both physical and emotional, are drawn with pens, but the human heart knows no such lines. The global immigration crisis, a complex issue that affects millions, is not just about numbers, policies or nations. It is about people, it is about those who are forced to leave behind their homes, their histories and their dreams in search of safety, opportunity and dignity. Immigration is a story of hope, but it is also a story of fear, loss and struggle. It's easy to look at this issue through the lens of political agendas, statistics and even fear of the unknown. But to truly understand the depth of the immigration crisis, we must rise above the surface, look beyond the headlines and tap into the deeper essence of humanity. As we explore this crisis, we must remember that what is happening to others is not a foreign matter. It is a reflection of who we are as human beings in the face of crisis. Compassion is the only solution that will lead us toward a brighter future. Migration is a deeply personal and human story. Behind every statistic, every policy debate, there lies an individual, a person with dreams, hopes and struggles. These aren't faceless numbers, but real people whose lives have been uprooted, often through no fault of their own, driven by circumstances far beyond their control. For many, migration is not a choice, it is an act of survival. Whether it's fleeing war, escaping political oppression or seeking refuge from the devastating impacts of climate change, immigrants are driven by a basic human need, the need for safety, security and opportunity. Imagine the strength it takes to leave behind everything you know, your home, your culture, your community, and embark on a journey into the unknown. These are stories of courage and resilience, of people who have been forced to step into uncertainty for the hope of a better future. For those who cross borders in search of a better life, there are often untold stories of hardship along the way. The journey itself can be perilous, filled with danger, separation and profound loss. Many immigrants endure long and exhausting treks through unfamiliar terrains, often with little more than the clothes on their back. The emotional toll is immense as they leave behind loved ones, sometimes forever, and embark on a journey that may not guarantee success. But even after reaching a destination, the story doesn't end. The reality of adapting to a new environment, learning a new language and navigating foreign systems of government and culture can be overwhelming. Yet these challenges don't erase the underlying drive to build a better life for oneself and one's family. The immigrant story is one of perseverance, of people who, despite adversity, continue to hope, dream and contribute. Each immigrant carries with them a piece of their homeland, their traditions, their values, their identities. These elements don't simply vanish when they cross borders, they become an integral part of the new societies. The human story of immigration is not one of division but of unity, where individuals and communities come together, each bringing something unique to the table, creating a richer, more diverse world. In the end, the immigration story is a reflection of humanity's enduring quest for belonging and dignity. It reminds us that regardless of where we come from or where we end up, we are all human, each with the same fundamental needs and desires to live in peace, to care for our families and to contribute to a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. The root causes of displacement are complex and multifaceted, often intertwined with forces beyond an individual's control. In many cases, the decision to leave one's home is not born of desire but of necessity. The factors driving displacement are deeply embedded in global systems, political, economic and environmental, that can create conditions of desperation, forcing people to seek refuge elsewhere. One of the most significant causes of displacement is armed conflict. War and violence, both civil and international, displace millions of people every year. Families are torn apart, communities are destroyed, and entire nations are destabilized. In regions like Syria, Afghanistan and South Sudan, people have fled for their lives, escaping bombing, shootings and the constant threat of death. These individuals and families are not just leaving behind their homes, they are abandoning the very foundations of their lives, places where they grew up, where their history and culture reside, and often where their loved ones were lost. The violence they face makes staying impossible, and they seek refuge in countries that offer safety, even if the journey is fraught with danger. Political instability is another driving force behind displacement. In countries where governments are weak, corrupt or repressive, people are often forced to flee in search of better governance or even basic freedoms. Authoritarian regimes, human rights violations and political persecution push individuals to leave everything behind. Whether it's fleeing a dictatorship in Venezuela or escaping political unrest in Myanmar, the desire for basic political rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of assembly and participation in government often forces people to take dangerous risks, hoping for a better life elsewhere. Economic hardship is another pervasive driver of migration. While many countries have experienced significant economic growth in recent decades, large portions of the global population remain trapped in poverty. In places where there are limited opportunities for work or education, people feel forced to migrate to provide a better future for their families. In many countries, youth unemployment is rampant and the lack of economic prospects is compounded by rising inequality. People often leave their homelands in search of jobs, better wages and opportunities that would allow them to support themselves and their families. Climate change is emerging as one of the most significant and far-reaching causes of displacement. Droughts, floods, storms and rising sea levels have already displaced millions of people, and the situation is only expected to worsen. Vulnerable communities, particularly those in low-lying coastal areas or areas dependent on agriculture, are facing the brunt of environmental degradation. As natural resources become scarcer, livelihoods are destroyed and communities are forced to leave. People who have lived on the land for generations find themselves without the means to survive as their environment changes rapidly and unpredictably. For instance, small island nations in the Pacific are seeing the literal sinking of their homes as rising sea levels encroach on their land. In addition to these immediate factors, there are long-standing historical and structural forces at play. Colonial histories, for example, have left a legacy of economic and social inequality that continues to affect many countries today. The arbitrary drawing of borders by colonial powers has led to internal conflicts and displacement as people find themselves divided by lines that were never of their making. Similarly, global economic systems that favor wealthy nations over poorer ones continue to exacerbate disparities, pushing vulnerable populations to seek opportunities elsewhere. When these factors combine, violence, political instability, economic hardship and environmental disaster, the result is often large-scale displacement. People are not leaving out of preference or ambition, but because staying behind is no longer an option. The journey they embark upon is one of survival, a desperate search for safety and dignity in a world that has become increasingly hostile and uncertain. These root causes reveal the deeper structures that drive displacement. While individual stories of migration are varied, the forces behind these movements are often shared. Recognizing the interconnectedness of these causes is essential to understanding the global migration crisis and finding lasting solutions to support displaced populations. Migration, often viewed with suspicion or fear, is in fact a fundamental necessity for many individuals around the world. Rather than being a threat to societies, migration is a reflection of human resilience and the pursuit of survival, safety and opportunity. It arises from the basic human instinct to seek better circumstances for oneself and one's family. For countless people, migration is not a choice. They are driven by a combination of factors such as conflict, economic hardship and environmental changes that make staying in their home country untenable. Following that trial, he built a society and also even ultra-here ecology developed an inner diet, something that is mediated by a mound of mycorrhization. For many displaced individuals, migrating is the only way to preserve their dignity and basic human rights. War, violence and persecution force people to leave their homes in search of safety. Refugees fleeing from conflict zones like Syria, Ukraine and Afghanistan are not running from the idea of their host country or its people. They are escaping life-threatening conditions where survival is not guaranteed. In these contexts, migration is an essential act of survival, an attempt to keep their families safe and rebuild their lives far from the horrors they have left behind. In addition to survival, migration is often driven by the quest for better economic opportunities. While some may perceive immigrants as competitors for jobs or resources, the reality is that many migrants are simply looking for opportunities that would otherwise be unavailable to them, seeking in no apringinihim. They will look away at the opportunities that would unavailable to them. In countries where economic opportunities are limited, where job markets are saturated, or where inequality reigns, migration becomes a lifeline. People leave their homes in search of work, education, and prospects that will allow them to improve their living standards. In this sense, migration is not a threat to the local economy, but a means of pursuing a better future. Immigrants often bring with them a willingness to work hard, contribute to the economy, and create new opportunities for themselves and their families. In the end, migration is not something to fear but a reminder of our shared human condition. It is the story of countless individuals who are simply seeking a chance for a better life, just as any of us would do if faced with the same circumstances. As we face this global challenge, we must shift our perspective, not viewing migrants as a threat, but as human beings deserving of compassion, understanding and dignity. By embracing the necessity of migration, we can work together to create solutions that benefit all. Let us remember that each person who migrates carries with them not just the hope of a better future for themselves, but the potential to contribute, enrich and strengthen the societies they join. The power to shape a world that values empathy and opportunity lies within our hands. We are all connected in this journey of life, and it is through our collective effort, our shared responsibility and our unwavering humanity that we can build a future where no one is forced to flee in search of peace and safety. Let us rise to this challenge with open hearts, and in doing so, create a world where migration is seen for what it truly is, a necessity, not a threat.